Welcome, everybody, to the news desk of the World of CONCACAF podcast. I'm Eric Schmitz.
I'm Jonathan Sleep.
And I'm Donald Wine.
And we are both, well, all of us, we are all both exhausted and enthralled by the conclusion of the Concacaf Nations League, the greatest competition on the face of the planet. As you know, the March window is the conclusion of the group stage for the 2022-2023 edition of the greatest tournament in global sport. And yeah, we've got special guests coming on. Jon Arnold's going to join us in a little bit to talk more about Nations League. But all in all, just like it's as good as it gets when it comes to international soccer in the region.
It was a fun window.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
It was a super fun window. I know we all got to go to the games. Eric and I were in Orlando and Grenada. Jonathan was also in Grenada. It was just a fun week. I think that's partly why we're still tired, because it was so fun. The sun in CONCACAF is very strong.
Yeah.
The rum
Yes,
in
it is.
CONCACAF might be stronger, but we enjoyed both of them. We enjoyed a lot of both.
Yes, we enjoyed a lot of things. We will have upcoming. We'll just tease it now. We've got laser focus episodes just ready to get knocked out from this window, and great content coming down the line. But before we get to any of that, let's talk Nations League. So we're just going to kind of run through what ended up happening after these final games of the tournament. We'll run through the groups who qualified for what, and then we'll get to our interview and talk to Jon about more in depth about what to take from this window. So first off, we'll just start off in League A. The group winners heading to the now official Nations League finals in Las Vegas, Nevada. Winning Group A, Mexico. Winning Group B, Panama. Winning Group C, Canada. And winning Group D, the defending champions, owners of the greatest trophy in sports, United States of America. Donald, all these teams are going to the Gold Cup, and as well as the Nations League finals, but some other teams qualified for the Gold Cup because of their finish. Who are they?
Yeah, so those are the second place teams in each of these League A groups. So in Group A, second place was Jamaica. In Group B, it was Costa Rica. Group C, it was Honduras. In Group D, it was El Salvador. So all four of those teams may not have qualified for the Nations League finals, but they did qualify for this summer's Gold Cup and will be a part of the draw when it happens on April 14th.
And then looking forward at the teams that have advanced to the Gold Cup prelims. So out of Group A, you have Suriname, Group B, Martinique, Group C, Curacao, and Group D, Grenada.
Quick side note, I know we talked about this on the preview episode, but I did notice Martinique did not have new uniforms with their new flag colors. Gotta get some new swag on that.
We know.
All right.
I know a guy.
We know a guy. All
Yeah.
right. So going on to League B, first place teams qualified directly to the Gold Cup and got promoted to League A for the 23-24 edition of Nations League. In Group A, Cuba is going up. In Group B, Haiti is going up. Group C, Nicaragua is going up. In Group D, Guatemala is going up. And all four of those teams are also going to this summer's Gold Cup.
And the second place teams in each of those groups in League B, again, they may not be promoted. They're not necessarily Gold Cup yet, but they do qualify for the Gold Cup prelims. And those four teams, out of Group A, it was Guadeloupe. In Group B, it was Guyana. Group C was Trinidad and Tobago. And Group D was French Guiana. So those four teams advance to the Gold Cup prelims that will occur just before the Gold Cup starts in June.
And then moving on for the last group of teams that have qualified for both promotion and the Gold Cup semifinals. So the group leaders or group winners out of League C. So in Group A, St. Martin, the Dutch side. In Group B, St. Kitts and Nevis. Group C, St. Lucia. And Group D, Puerto Rico.
So all those teams will be playing for a spot in this summer's Gold Cup in June of 2023. The prelims will be held at a location yet to be determined. The other thing to remember is because of the new format, the last place teams in League A and League B are not getting relegated. So good news, the Vinci Heat are safe in League B for the next edition. All right. So we saw some great action, some great finishes, but I think we need to get some great insight on this. Donald, who's joining us today?
Yeah, so if there's one person who loves CONCACAF as much as we do, it's Jon Arnold. And Jon Arnold from his subs, he used to be formerly of the Striker in Texas, but now operates his own Substack called Getting CONCACAFed. Look, with CONCACAF, he's getting CONCACAFed. There's no reason why we wouldn't have him on this show. He loves Nations League as much as we do. And so we are happy to bring him on here in just a couple of seconds to talk about all that happened in Nations League and really kind of discuss what went down in some of these games and how competitive they all were. So here it is, our interview that we did just a few minutes ago with Jon Arnold.
All right, we are pleased to be joined by a friend of the program, friend of the pod, someone who covers CONCACAF better than we ever could. Jon Arnold is here. John, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I think this interim period between CONCACAF events is always tough. There's weird announcements that get made, but like for the most part, I'm just looking forward to the next games. Luckily, it was like a good, meaty Nations League window, as I'm sure we'll get into. So I've had plenty to go over. But yeah, once the games are done, there's a little feeling of absence. Plus, you think like you're like, yeah, cool, it's done. I'm going to chill out and like relax and rest. And then it's like, oh no, like I gotta write a newsletter. I gotta send some stuff to other clients. We're gonna chat. Like, it's crazy. But anyway, all good.
Don't worry, John. They have done a lot to keep us busy. They're going to have 75 different draws for the two tournaments they have. We have a whole Continental Classico, all-state thing that we're doing. We have a bunch of stuff that they're trying to keep us busy with.
That's true.
They know why we need to be kept busy because we just got off an incredible Nations League window.
That's true. No, listen, I know you're joking, but like the truth is, at least we know what's happening, right? Like CONCACAF today is like, hey, here are the pots for the Gold Cup, and here's how the prelims are going to work, and we're going by seeding, just like we did last time. Like that information is progress, and anyone, I know you guys have been covering, looking at the region for a long time. Fans in the region who have been paying attention to stuff for a long time will know like that didn't always happen. There were like these regulations that would pop up by surprise. Like the fact that now we're like, geez, this seems like a lot, but we know what to expect is progress. Like, I'm not trying to say give them a medal. They're meeting a minimum standard, but that wasn't getting met even 5 years ago, I would say, even 5 years.
For sure.
No one loves to announce admin more than CONCACAF does these days.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, and there's so many changes. We can talk about the Nations League change, like, and Copa America qualification and all of that. But like, again, like, to me, at least it's like, hey, we can look at the ratings. We know what they are. We can like refresh the web page. Like there are some things that are happening that are positive. So
yeah, if there's anything CONCACAF does well, it's make stuff up to do, always inventing new competitions.
So, John, I want to start our discussion by focusing on League A because we now know, of course, the 4 teams that have qualified for the Nations League finals, the semifinal and final. That's Mexico, the United States, Costa Rica, Panama and Canada. But when you look at those 4 teams, it felt like on the last match day, only Canada really had an easy go of it. I think the other teams kind of had some struggles. Mexico had their struggles. United States, I know they all eventually won or drew, but they all kind of like had to scratch and claw to get there. Is that, did that create some excitement? The fact that these final match days for most of these, not just League A, but also League B and C had games where the group was in doubt and determined by the result of some of the final games?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, it was compelling And one thing that I would say to me that it indicates is that this tournament is working. Now, again, like once the format changes, what does that mean? We're going to have to kind of watch and find out. But, a huge complaint for a long time from Mexico, from the United States, from some other, maybe Costa Rica. I don't think Canada's been complaining that much because they haven't been a quote unquote power team for long. If they even are, they're going to have a chance to certainly put themselves in that conversation. Is, hey, we don't get enough competition within CONCACAF. Why do we have to do this? Why are you making us play these games? And, when the US puts up 7 goals on another League A team, those arguments kind of seem to carry some water. But then when they only beat another team 1-0 or they draw earlier in the competition, you say, well, listen, like if you cannot steamroll these teams as you claim you are going to, then why should we say, okay, we're going to give you the opportunity to do your own thing and be kind of quote unquote above CONCACAF? Again, these are not the discussions that are actually happening, but these are the discussions that are being spoken about in a roundabout way by officials of certain federations with officials in the confederation. So I think that it really speaks to what the Nations League is supposed to do, which is to strengthen that competition and to say, if you're not good enough, you're getting sent down. That was paused this year. But in theory, Grenada, you should go down. You weren't good. See you next time if you can qualify from this group. Haiti, wow, great job in League B. You're back. You can certainly try and prove your worth. So I think that the League A competition level was surprisingly high. I wrote in the newsletter, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was something like 4 of 20, I'm bad at math, 20 some games that were decided by 3 or more goals. Every other game was 2 or fewer. So I think when you look at the margins, how teams suffered, how teams had to fight to get results, how teams didn't go undefeated, no one was able to get this thing through this thing perfect. They've been asking for the level of competition to be raised. CONCACAF put in Nations League to try and raise that competition, to force teams to care, essentially, to force teams to prepare. And so far, it's working out through the levels, but certainly in the top end. I think the Final Four, and people say, oh, Mexico, US in the semifinal. Whoops, CONCACAF's going to be mad. I don't think so. Fans from one of those teams are going to go to the final against Canada or Panama, and there's some narrative there. If it's Mexico, Canada, well, we remember what happened in the snow up in Edmonton. There are these lines that I think fans are smart enough to draw now, where people are going to want to go to games, people are going to want to see these competitions. So I think the top level seems healthy. It's changing, so we don't exactly know what's going to happen in the future. And some of those teams, the top 4 from the CONCACAF ranking, are going to get a little bit of a pass. But ultimately, Donald, I do think this was fun, compelling, and competitive tournament, even if we ended up with 3 teams that we thought we would and Panama.
I think the answer, right, getting to the 4 teams, the way that we arrived at it, even though we came to the, like you said, three contenders and then Panama kind of replacing Costa Rica, I still think it lends itself to the fact that these games were still really fun to watch. I mean, all of them were, again, competitive. Like you said, most of them were competitive. The 3 of us went to one of the few non-competitive games in the whole window.
So you guys are the variable. Y'all are the problem.
Yeah.
We're always the problem. You've met us, so
we try to be. No,
if there's one. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
No, go. What were you saying, Donald?
I was going to say, just, when you're looking through these, and I know we're going to talk about some of the other results, but if you look at one result, what's the one that was the most surprising to you?
I think I wrote in the newsletter that wraps up the Nations League that Jamaica tying with Mexico. I feel like there's a Jamaican hope cycle. They do something like this. They hang with Mexico. They have players regularly coming in as good as Leon Bailey. Michael Antonio unable for this window, but you think he's going to be back. Some of the center backs that we're used to seeing, Ethan Pinnock. Andre Blake injured for this window, but he's going to be back. And you say, man, this team could be really good. And then they put a couple good performances together. They don't win anything. The federation does something, or the coach does something, or the players do something. Something doesn't work as it's supposed to. And we go back to this other point in the cycle where it's like Jamaica's bad. And then you kind of like get back to this. They get some new eligible players, they get a new coach, they get direction. But to be at the top of the roller coaster feels fun. You think you're going to get a cool drop. You think it's going to work out. So I think that was the most surprising result to me. And look, like you could say, well, Mexico's been bad. Why would you be surprised by that? Jamaica's on the rise. Yeah, but it's the Azteca still. It's Diego Coca's first match at home, second match overall, and a Mexico team that had rested up for the Jamaica game. Like Guillermo Ochoa didn't travel, and other top players didn't travel, preparing specifically for that game instead of going to Suriname. So I think to me that was the biggest surprise. You know, in theory, what I should be saying is that Costa Rica didn't win the group, but they've been so rough, and except for those magical 7 games, was it, during qualification? There's no surprise there, unfortunately, for Tico's fans, because it just like it's more of the same and it's bad. So I think the most surprising to me was Jamaica going toe to toe with Mexico at the Azteca and doing it in a way that makes you think they're going to be somebody that teams are going to have to deal with in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, and you talked about Jamaica having a new coach and heading upwards on the hope cycle. Just talking about Mexico, also new coach Diego Coca. How do you think he's acquitted himself after this window? Where do you think the vibe level is south of the border?
The vibe is bad. The vibe is bad. I mean, that's no huge surprise, right? But I think that one thing, I don't mean to keep plugging the newsletter, but like tomorrow I have a piece that's going to be called "The People versus the Mexico National Team," and I think that the relationship has been really damaged. The headline for so many outlets in Mexico was not Mexico draws or even anything regarding the game. It was that the fans booed. The fans booed Ochoa. The fans booed the team. The fans booed Coca. And I think that there are so many things behind that frustration. One is that the Azteca, as Hector Herrera said, isn't what it used to be. And I think that's because you have a certain type of fan that is able to access the Azteca, afford the ticket, get on the train or take an Uber or whatever, drive to the Azteca, and lives in Mexico City and is following the Mexico national team, but already has a certain type of vibe where you never see them play in Guadalajara, you never see them play in Monterrey, you never see them play in Tijuana, you never see them play in these enormous cities that have facilities, but maybe they have the wrong sponsorship name for the stadium. Well, Mexico's national team isn't going to play there because the official bank is X and the stadium is named after Y, right? There's all these other business reasons. But I think Coca is in a weird spot because he's a manager who built his successful teams in the past around being really good at the back, playing smart, playing his style established around a kind of tentpole, usually center back, which he has if he wants it, right? I mean, there's actually several. You could do Cesar Montes, Johan Vasquez, Hector Moreno still kicking around. Like there's good Mexican center backs. But is that the way that the fans want to see the Mexico national team play? Do they want to see Mexico grind out a 1-0 or a 2-2? I don't think so. And so I think he's in a weird spot where he has to sort of question, do I change my own principles to adapt to the expectation? Or do I try and make the Mexico fan / administrator / whoever he's trying to please thrilled when I win a trophy by getting, 1-0 results, 0-0, win a shootout, whatever the case may be. I mean, the thing is, like, there is attacking talent in Mexico, but not a great number 9 option right now, unless Chicharito comes back in the fold. Right now, he's hurt. Santi Jimenez didn't look as good as Mexico fans want him to look. Did okay, but like maybe he's the next number 9. But those are questions that Coca has to answer, and so I think the vibe is like pretty rough because fans want a new taste after Tata Martino, and they got a pretty familiar reheated leftovers version of Mexico.
So before we move on to League B, I have one follow-up. Does Coca make it through the summer?
In a way, I think he's always felt like a placeholder. For whom, I'm not sure. But I think when you look at the way he kind of got appointed, it almost seemed like the idea was, well, if this guy sucks, we can switch gears before anything gets too serious ahead of 2026. So I don't know what he would or wouldn't have to do to keep his job, but they got a Nations League semifinal against the U.S. If you lose that, the pressure's on in the Gold Cup. And they got a Gold Cup field that, like I'm saying, I think looks pretty competitive. So I hadn't even thought about it that way, Jonathan, but maybe no. Maybe I'm predicting that he doesn't even make it past 6 games, you know?
I mean, I was gonna say, like, what's the benchmark for them, right? Because I mean, for a program who expects to win every trophy and currently holds, I'm looking at none, like, is winning the Nations League but losing the Gold Cup enough? Is winning the Gold Cup but losing the Nations League enough?
Like, in a way, Tata Martino survived multiple finals defeats to their biggest rival, the United States, because in a lot of ways, 2 reasons. One, he was Tata Martino. He had pedigree. He had trophies to point at. He is a known figure on the world stage in a way that Diego Coca is not. And 2, he had this long-term plan, which he said, I'm going to execute this, and my goal is to get to the 5th game of the World Cup. And you sort of felt like if you change something now, that will be damaged in a way that you're not going to be able to fix. And ultimately, that is the harsh standard, not just of the Mexico national team. We can talk about Mexico fans being harsh, but ultimately, all international play is really judged by what do you do every 4 years at the World Cup. And I think, like, it's really hard to meet that standard. And it's also hard because our sample size is going to be small. You're probably playing 4 games. If you play 5 in Mexico, you did it, right? So, yeah, I think that the standard set in a way was only for Tata Martino, and it's entirely possible that Mexico says we're shifting gears. Then again, like Bielsa, if you say like, oh, he's the dream candidate, well, he was available, right? There's all these other guys who you could say, well, like they were kicking, Pochettino was available when they were trying to hire Diego Coca. Are they just kicking the can down the road, hoping that like Pep isn't kidding when he winks that he would coach a national team in the 2026 World Cup, even though he signed a Manchester City contract extension? That'd be una bomba. That'd be crazy. That'd be big news. But like, is that really the plan? Is that going to happen? Are you waiting for Mourinho? Like who? Like the state of the international game, which I, as you can tell from me being a total nerd, like I vastly prefer to the club game. Like the state of the international game is like, if you're a successful club manager, why would you go to that? Like, what? Even Tata Martino taking Mexico, I asked him, like, man, why did you do this? And he's like, I kind of want to spend more time with my grandkids, whatever. And, it's reportedly turned down Boca today or yesterday. So it's like, all right, like maybe that's true, and it gives you a different kind of like style of life. But all the kind of upward, like Nagelsmann and Mourinho and Pochettino, whoever, like if you're this young coach on the rise and looking for your next opportunity, I don't know. I don't see it. So I think like it's entirely possible Coca doesn't make it through, but like, what are you going to do after that? I don't know.
Yeah. So really interesting summer for Mexico. It's a lot about League A, but the great thing about Nations League is that it's the depth of CONCACAF. So League B, what is your big takeaway from League B? We had the 4 teams get promoted. What stuck out to you?
Well, let me go negative and then bring it positive. I thought it was extremely disappointing that the Dominican Republic didn't make it to even the Gold Cup prelims. I named them my loser of the tournament, I guess, for League B. But this is a country that has extreme potential. They made the Olympics. We've seen them have youth success. We see players that are Dominican excelling in places like Spain and MLS. They didn't do anything wrong in March. Marcelo Neveloff, the new manager, former Orlando City Academy leader, had them playing okay. They beat Belize, which Belize should be relegated. No relegation. And they drew with a good French Guiana team, but ultimately fell short and don't get promoted, don't get the Gold Cup prelims. I think it's too bad for soccer in the Dominican Republic, kind of trying to become this number 2 sport next to baseball, where it's, they produce quite literally like hundreds of great prospects.
Yeah.
Why could you not do that with soccer? So I think that's negative. I think a really good story that I hope doesn't get cut short is Cuba. Since they have been open to calling in their players based abroad who have not fallen afoul of the Cuban government / sports setup, they've been incredible. They've been really, really good. They got relegated from Ligue A, but since then, rolled through. They lost their first game as well of the Nations League to Guadeloupe, and since then they haven't lost. They've only won. It's been 5 victories. Their back line is really good. They're not playing attractive soccer necessarily, but they're playing good soccer. So I think that if Cuba is able to get the travel documents necessary to play in the United States in the Gold Cup, or potentially play in another country, hush hush, that may be in the works. I don't know how you would work that out if you do a draw, but from what I'm hearing, it might be possible that something like I don't remember what year, 2019 was it, when the Gold Cup was in a couple different countries, that might be on the table. Well, I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, all that to say, if Cuba makes it to the tournament, I think they could be a quite interesting team, and not in the way that Cuba teams have in the past, where it's like, who is going to leave the hotel, who is going to stay in the US, the sort of like unfortunate reality of like what the Cuban teams have been interesting for in the past. It could actually be interesting for how they play the soccer. So I think that's a good story from League B. And the other one, like just kind of under the radar because it's boring. Haiti steamrolled everyone. Like, they were awesome. I mean, for how difficult it is to not be able to play your home games actually at home, to have to, deal with the frustration of everything happening back in Haiti. We saw Violette overcome difficulty and get past Austin FC in the CONCACAF Champions League. Now at a national level, Haiti's back in League A, back in the Gold Cup, where they in 2019 made it all the way to the semifinals. So it's no surprise, but Haiti back. Cool. They're back, baby.
Yeah.
No, sure.
So moving on to League C. I think the big story is, of course, Bonaire absolutely throwing it away, going into the last match window. But what are the other big takeaways from that group or that league?
Yeah, I think that absolutely is the most interesting story. Is Bonaire, 20,000 and change population, had been doing really, really well. It's an interesting place. I don't have my arms around it, but from what I understand from talking to people, doing some reporting, there's a significant influence from not just South America and like Venezuela, which is close, but like Peru and Colombia. So there's a lot of guys who have that sort of background. I think there's actually a team like in the league of Peruvian guys, if I'm not mistaken, called like Arriba Peru or something. Like, it's just like very blatant, like, what you would name. I mean, 20,000 people, right? Like, it's smaller than suburbs of big US cities, not even, big US cities. So anyway, like St. Martin is double the population. It's the Dutch side of St. Martin, and they take advantage of Bonaire's mistakes and also forced Bonaire's mistakes because they smoked Bonaire in that first game 6-1. I think once that seed of doubt starts to grow, especially for a team that hasn't quote unquote been there before, like Bonaire, and you're playing your first ever game at home, which is a cool story. The fans seem to be there supporting. That pressure is legitimate, right? So so that's a bit of a bummer. I think the other stories, or two other stories that I would highlight, both of the group. Well, 3. One, Anguilla didn't finish last. Shout out Anguilla.
Go Dolphins.
Yeah, the Circly Dolphins didn't finish last, which is awesome. But the other two of the other ones, St. Kitts went through, which I thought they should have. No disrespect to Aruba, but that's kind of sentence that only I have to say. No disrespect to Aruba, but I thought they were going to go through St. Kitts and Nevis. But the other two winners, St. Lucia and Puerto Rico, I think are interesting for different reasons. St. Lucia, coached by Stern John. Wow, that's pretty cool. And seems to be kind of actually going on a path. They didn't try and qualify for the Men's World Cup. I was like, hey, what's going on with this? Talked to a few players. Everyone was frustrated, but at the same time, it just seemed like the administration had no direction. Since then, they have a good, well-renowned coach who everyone's heard of. They've played multiple friendlies, including that really fun friendly series against San Marino, the European minnow. And they were ready for these games. So they're going to be in the Gold Cup prelims. They're going to be in League B, and they've earned it. Puerto Rico, on the other hand, they still are able to get through undefeated, but changing coaches from Dave Sarachan, from what I understand, he was open to staying, to continuing to coach Puerto Rico. Now they're in the Gold Cup prelims, which I think is probably the biggest moment in Puerto Rican soccer, men's soccer history. Maybe there's an old school Caribbean Cup or Olympic qualification or something that I've overlooked, but to me, it's a pretty big moment. And to have uncertainty on the bench when you had this project of convincing young players, often based in the USO, some based in MLS academies, others based totally different places, South America, Europe. And then to kind of shift gears, I think is a real shame. So Puerto Rico goes up, and look, maybe they'll shut me up, and maybe the new coaching staff will be absolute wizards. But I think it's a real shame. It sounds like maybe there's some sort of plan in place, and they're also dealing. The federation is like fighting the Olympic Committee because of how they're being classified. So like, there's all sorts of stuff that's happening in the background that could be influencing those types of decisions. But for a country or Commonwealth, but the team that plays as a country in these international competitions and can fly that Puerto Rican flag and sort of be that representative, I don't understand it. So hopefully it becomes clear soon.
Quick thoughts on Dave Sarakin finding out he had been let go when they announced his replacement.
It's terrible. I mean, look, for some reason this keeps happening too in CONCACAF. So yeah, that was I think from one of the Puerto Rican blogs or coverage sites. So like, I talked to Remco Vicentini from Curacao, who's back leading Curacao now, but he found out that Goose Hiddink was overtaking him when he was like on a bike ride, and his daughter texted him, "Don't do that. That's not cool for any job." I don't know. I really don't get what Puerto Rico is doing, because like, it's one of those things where like sometimes you see mismanagement or just weird decisions, and you're like, yeah, sure, this federation is known for this, or ooh, I knew that would happen when this leader left, or whatever. Puerto Rico, it's like the same president, same. There was a change for sporting director, but like it seemed to be even a positive change there. They're announcing these women's projects. They're announcing like stuff that seems good, and then all of a sudden it's like, we got a new coach, and it's this dude who's going to give us continuity because he was Dave's old assistant back in the day, kind of. It's like, what? But is Dave coming back? Like, is he just taking this window off? That was like what I thought maybe they were doing. But yeah, stop. Listen, I'm not an HR expert, but if you're a CONCACAF FA and you need help with your HR, talk to me first. Yeah, fire them first. I'll do it for you. I've had to ask the tough questions before. But yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, we'll get going here soon. We really appreciate it coming on. But just quickly, this is where we've got through our second CONCACAF Nations League group stage. Obviously, this competition is very important to us. Do you feel that this tournament is a success at this point for CONCACAF?
I think it is a success for CONCACAF. Look, like, what I think it's hard to keep in mind sometimes when you keep seeing the same teams playing the US, playing Mexico, playing Canada, whoever you root for, if you're one of the power team fans, a fan of one of the power teams, is like, this is a huge confederation. They have Anguilla as a member, and they have just as many votes as the US does. So you kind of got to keep them in mind. And I think like it's been a success for those countries 100%. I think for the bigger countries, it's been a success, and you could say maybe 90%, because yeah, maybe they're having to play games that they don't love, but at the same time, people I think are excited for the Final Four. I think you're increasing the competition that you're facing internally within CONCACAF. And I think that's needed. Like, you have two choices. You can break away and do your own thing, Australia leaving Oceania and joining Asia. Say, hey, we need better competition. We want to be with this group. We want to have these teams. Or you can try and actually help the competition increase by making your region stronger. It seems kind of counterintuitive, but those are really the two options, right? Leave or help. And I think like in a way with Nations League and with some of the changes that are being made, you're seeing those teams get help. It's not going to happen over two tournaments, right? Like, think about how long some of these teams have been putting projects in place to try and win on the field. Now multiply that times 35 or whatever. Like, it's just not going to happen just right away that all these teams that have this potential are going to be good. We didn't even talk about Guatemala. They get promoted. Guatemala's population, I was looking the other day, enormous, like way bigger than I thought. Like a legitimately, like, not compared to the US, but like a big country for Central America. They should be rolling 13, and they're not. But they got suspended from FIFA a couple of years ago, right? And they're rebuilding everything, and it's not going to happen just overnight that you're going to have development programs and have young players come through and have U20 success and U23 success. That necessitates time. And I think the changes I think are like kind of not short-sighted, but maybe reactive rather than proactive, where it's like, we got to figure out how to qualify for this Copa America. We got to give our big teams a couple of days off, whatever. But ultimately, I think if they keep the idea of the Nations League the same, and it's probably not on CONCACAF, like CONCACAF will probably keep running this thing back. It's probably on FIFA, right? If FIFA starts to do the ideas that they have, where it's like, what if we did a worldwide Nations League and all this stuff? It's like, I don't know, man. I mean, like as fun as it is for San Marino to come over and play St. Lucia, like I'm not going to tune in for League G of the FIFA World Nations League. But if they keep it reasonable, if CONCACAF can keep sort of providing this to their teams, I think they will. And I think the evidence of that is in the fact that they're launching it for the women's game as well. So I think it's been a success. There are things to tweak, but ultimately, if they didn't keep doing this tournament, which from everything I understand, they want to keep rolling, it would be a shame because I think the steps forward that the majority of the region have taken through the tournament have been big steps.
Yeah. Like CONCACAF itself, it's not perfect, but it's ours. So we're going to continue to embrace it. Jon, we really appreciate you joining us. Obviously, when it comes to Nations League, we want the best. So appreciate you coming on. You talked about your newsletter. Love reading it. I'm a big fan of it. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yes. And like CONCACAF, you said not perfect. It's ours. My URL is a little too complicated. Also like CONCACAF, getconcacaf.substack.com. You can Google Getting CONCACAF, which is the name of the newsletter, and it'll pop up, or Bing, or I don't even know, ChatGPT. I haven't tried that yet, but
Alta
at some
Vista.
point, yeah, Alta Vista. I asked Jeeves the other day. He knew what I was talking about. I'm for subscribers that are paying. It's $50 a year for the full experience. You get a premium edition Monday and Friday. Everyone else gets a regular edition on Wednesday, which has a lot of good info. I'm for premium subscribers from a big milestone, and I'm 20 and change free subscribers from 4,000, which is like, hey, that's 4,000 people reading about CONCACAF, which isn't exactly as popular as, the NFL or whatever. So I really would appreciate if people do check it out, put your email in, get the free list, or toss $50 a year for the full experience. I'm close to those milestones. So I'm like, can we get there? Can we get there? So
you'll get there.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Thanks,
you're about to get the world of CONCACAF bump. So hopefully we can close it down for you. Honestly, this premium edition, worth every penny. I can't say enough about how much I enjoy seeing that pop into my inbox every week.
Appreciate that, man. That's the idea. They're not all winners, but most of them are worse draws. So
yeah.
No, I am trying to create something that CONCACAF fans are happy to see in their inbox. I know everyone gets a lot of emails. I know everyone has to pay for a lot of stuff these days, man. I mean, yeah, Apple TV for MLS and Paramount Plus, and like, I get it. If you're on the free list, that's cool. Bump me to 4,000, baby. But yeah, obviously, I can't pay my bills with the free list. So I am trying to create something that people are thrilled to see in their inbox when they get a lot of emails. They're like, I'm going to read this one right now. So that's a real thrill to hear, Eric, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, and what's your Twitter handle again?
Oh, is that still okay?
As of right now, it's relevant.
I'm going down with the ship, man. I haven't joined the TikTok or anything. I'm going down with the ship, so it's at Arnold, COMMAJON. I have a blue check until tomorrow, I guess.
Tomorrow.
All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on. We'll be chatting with you soon. Hope to see you in Vegas, maybe.
I think so. If I were a betting man, I'd say, bet I'll see you there.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jon. See ya.
Much love.
All right, we're back. Thank you again to Jon Arnold, the patron saint of CONCACAF, as far as we're concerned. Again, you need to subscribe to his newsletter. It is necessary content. And just a personal shout out, I didn't get a chance to mention it to him. Thanks to him. His recap newsletter that went out this week, I believe it went out on Wednesday. He did feature one of our tweets in his newsletter. So, shout out to for the brand.
Look,
Jon.
I will say there was, I forgot which tweet that we had a couple nights ago. It was just some innocuous tweet about Nations League. and I saw some of the likes that were coming in. I was like, oh, here's some journalists who were like treating us as real news. I don't. This is a new feeling. I like it. Keep it coming.
Yeah. If you listen to our laser focus episodes, news is not our forte.
We're not bringing
nonsense. We are about nonsense, and that's what we try to stick to. But speaking of nonsense, there's going to be a lot going on in the desert this summer because, as we mentioned, the top teams in League A, the 4 group winners, will head to the 2022-23 CONCACAF Nations League Finals to be held at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada, June 15th and 18th. You'll have your 2 semifinals on the 15th and your final and your third place game on the 18th. In the semifinals, the U.S. takes on Mexico, and then on the other semifinal, Panama takes on Canada. And before we even dive into like what we think, what we're looking at for this, are we shocked that CONCACAF actually let the U.S. Mexico play before the final?
Yes.
Yes,
I am.
Yeah,
because that's normally how they shift it.
Yeah, I mean they set up the Gold Cup specifically for these 2 teams to face each other in the final. So yes, I'm shocked.
Yeah, I do think it's great for CONCACAF that we're going to have fresh faces. We're going to have a fresh final. U.S. and Mexico are actually the only 2 teams from the last Nations League finals to advance for this one. With Costa Rica and Honduras not qualifying this time, Canada and Panama finally getting a chance on the world's biggest stage, and one of them being guaranteed to go to a final. I think it's really refreshing for CONCACAF and great for Canada, because if they're going to talk about how they think they're the kings of CONCACAF, then they're going to have to prove it. I
just can't. It blows my mind how much shit they talk for a nation that has won fuck all. Like
they haven't won a trophy in the region since 2000.
Yeah. I mean, they claim some like bullshit and made up like stuff.
And they hosted that one.
Yeah, they hosted that one. But like it blows my mind because they're still on there like I don't even think they understand how CONCACAF works because like they think the US schedules all of this stuff. And that's not the case, but I mean, they're a bit thick up there.
I just don't like them saying that they're kings of CONCACAF when I joked with Jon Arnold about all the trophies that Mexico holds. I'm still checking my notes. 0 still, and let me check how many that Canada holds. Also 0. That's funny. It's like the United States holds almost every single trophy that exists in CONCACAF. And I'm talking about every single trophy that exists in CONCACAF, from the rooted to the tuta, like the earlobes to the toenails. We own all that shit. So I think it's funny for that. But on a serious note, like the other thing that kind of perplexes me about them setting up US Mexico in the semifinal and not kind of switching this around is that it makes the game that's happening in Phoenix in a couple weeks all the more dumber in a way, right? Because now they're facing each other 2 games in a row. So you either like, we already knew that game was a friendly where it's not going to be a lot of,
it's not the A team.
It's not the A team. I mean, you're calling in MLS players or probably calling in Liga MX players. I mean, like, yeah, it'll be like one of those friendlies in the sense that it's US Mexico is always competitive, but like in proverbial sense, they're going to be kicking the ball around. Because like not giving away tactics, not giving away things like that, because they don't want to give away anything that their opponent could use in 45 days from then, or I'm sorry, it'll be almost 2 months from then, where they're going to meet in Vegas and play for something real. Like, so it's almost like last time where we played Costa Rica, then we played in the Nations League final. We missed Costa Rica because they went to extra time with Mexico, went to penalties, I think, if I remember correctly. And then we played them in a friendly like 2 days after the Nations League final was over. And I'm like, yo, none of these guys want to be here. Like neither team and none of these fans want to be here. I know, I was there. None of us want to be there. So I think it's weird that they set that up that way.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is like it's even dumber when you think of like Phoenix and Vegas aren't far from each other. Like you're pulling in like regionally a lot of the same people. And so it just but I
like that there's going to be a good like a new final, Eric, like you said. I just think and they wanted, I think they did that because they want the guaranteed USA Mexico game. But like this is, I mean, just like, to equate in basketball, this is like, last year when Duke and UNC were in the Final Four, everybody's like, yo, you don't set up these teams ever to be on the same side of the bracket. If you're going to meet in the final, don't meet in the semifinal. These games are never small. This is the biggest game in sports. USA Mexico is the biggest game in soccer on this side of the world and most of the parts of the world. It's one of the biggest rivalries on the planet. And you're setting it up for a semifinal. Like that is weird. That's just weird.
Well, it does. The one thing that I did think about, and John had talked about it as well, is that with all the pressure on Diego Coca in Mexico, he's going to have a chance to at least leave Vegas on a win. Because, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that we believe the U.S. is probably going to beat them. They're going to be able to play another game. They're either playing the final or they're playing the third place game. And if they can at least get a win there and kind of have some momentum into going into a Gold Cup that they expect to be a favorite for, it might be good for them. But they finished fourth in the seeding for this. So are they going to finish fourth in the finals? Wouldn't mind it, but we'll see.
I think the part that Jon Arnold was talking about Diego Coca and kind of like the pressure, the weird pressure that he's under, but that he doesn't have kind of pressure, right? Like a lot of people view him as a caretaker manager, but he was hired over guys that people think that are going to replace him because they're already free. And so the question, like for Mexico, if he go like Tata, like he said, he kind of escaped. Tata went, lost 2 finals and got beaten in World Cup qualifying and then drew them, had a scoreless draw on home soil. So in the span of a year, just like over a year, not even a year, he lost 3 times and drew once to his biggest rival. And Diego Coca is not going to get, and he survived all that and still got to go to the World Cup where they flamed out, right? Coca is not going to have that same kind of leash. Like if he loses one of these things, I could see him getting let go because he wasn't even supposed to be hired in the first place. Like,
yeah,
the federation had people, or the report was they had Bielsa, and Bielsa said yes. And the federation is like, we're hiring Bielsa, and a couple of managers from big clubs like America and Chivas were like, no, we don't want him. We're going to bring our guy in, and you're going to hire him. And the federation was like, okay. So like it's super. They're in a super sticky situation because again, they have nothing to show for it. They're not going to the Olympics. They're not going to the Women's World Cup. They fired every manager that they've had. They fired their whole sporting department, and they have a grand total of 0 trophies in the last 5 years. Like nothing about what they are doing is working. And their answer is to hire this guy and then maybe keep him beyond June if he manages to pluck off a win in the Nations League. So it's super weird, but I want American fans to not get complacent because Mexico's still pretty good, right? They can still beat the United States in this tournament. We don't want that to happen, but don't let them their whole house being in disarray and having to real world, mad real world type of fights lead you to believe that they're in any way unprepared for this. We need, the United States needs to be ready for this too.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We're going to wrap it here. I do want to just give out some shout outs. First of all, to the people of Grenada. Had a great time there. Shout out to the president of the FA. Sizzle rocks.
Sizzle.
We'll talk more about that in our laser focus. Also want to shout out Gerwin Lake of St. Martin, who ended up the leading scorer of all leagues, finishing at 8 goals in this Nations League. So shout out Gerwin. Also want to shout out Bonaire. Opened your brand new stadium, first home game ever. That kind of blew it to
great.
It looked great. They lost to Turks and Caicos, but really excited for Bonaire and their future. And shout out our patrons. Thank you for supporting this podcast. We wouldn't do it out with your support, especially. Go ahead, Donald.
I was going to say shout out St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and a special non-shout out to Inter Caribbean Airways.
Yeah. Stay tuned for that laser focus episode. We got those coming up. They're in the oven now. You'll get those.
And we have some video too. That'll be that I'm working on editing together. But we got some content.
Yes. But as I was saying about our Patreon, we'll get some of this content, including some special photo galleries of things that we saw on the islands. Patreon.com/CONCACAF. I did want to shout out our newest renewed patron, Andrew Breezy. We love you. Praise Breezes. And you can support our podcast there. Patreon.com/PodCACAF. Follow us on social media at PodCACAF, PODCACAF. And if you want to email us about something, podcacaf@gmail.com. Donald, you got anything else?
Nope. I enjoyed Nations League. Let's do it again.
Jonathan, you got anything?
No, nothing else. But I'm just ready for more Nations League.
Yes, I am ready for Las Vegas. Let's go gambling. Let's win some money. Vegas, Vegas, Vegas. We'll see you in June.